Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to carry the invisible weight of everyone else's opinions? How often we measure our lives through borrowed eyes, waiting for someone to tell us that we are enough, that we belong, that we matter. We hand strangers the authority to define our happiness. We surrender our peace to applause that fades as quickly as it arrives. And somewhere along the way, we forget that a soul was never created to survive on permission. There comes a moment in every life when silence becomes more honest than noise, when being alone no longer feels like punishment but begins to feel like a sacred return. In that quiet space, away from constant approval and endless expectations, something remarkable begins to awaken. You discover the voice that was always yours, buried beneath the demands of pleasing everyone else. You begin to understand that loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of yourself. And once you find yourself again, solitude transforms into freedom. The world will always have an opinion. It will celebrate you one day and question you the next. If your identity depends on their applause, then your peace will disappear the moment they grow silent. But there is another way to live. A life where your confidence is not borrowed, where your joy is not negotiated, where your value is not determined by how loudly others approve of you. That kind of life cannot be given to you by another person. It must be claimed from within. There is extraordinary courage in walking your own path without asking for permission. There is power in choosing your peace over popularity, your truth over acceptance, your growth over belonging to places that require you to shrink. The strongest people are not those who collect the most admiration. They are the ones who can sit with themselves, face their own reflection without fear, and still know they are worthy without an audience. Today is not about learning how to push people away. It is about learning how to pull yourself back from the endless need to be approved, applauded, and understood by everyone around you. Because the moment you stop chasing validation is the very moment your life begins to belong to you again. And that is where real freedom starts. True freedom begins the moment you stop asking the world for permission to be yourself. For many people, life becomes an endless performance. Every decision, every dream, every word is carefully measured against the expectations of others. They hesitate before speaking because they fear judgment. They abandon their ambitions because they fear rejection. They silence their own hearts because they crave acceptance. Without realizing it, they become prisoners of opinions that were never meant to define them. They spend years trying to fit into spaces that demand they become smaller, quieter, and less authentic. Yet no amount of approval can satisfy a person who has forgotten how to approve of themselves. The desire to be accepted is deeply human, but the need for constant validation is a quiet chain that limits growth. It teaches people to believe that their value depends on applause, compliments, and recognition. When praise arrives, they feel worthy. When criticism appears, they question everything about themselves. Their confidence rises and falls with the changing moods of others, making their peace fragile and temporary. A life built on external validation can never be stable because the opinions of people are always changing. Someone who admires you today may misunderstand you tomorrow. Someone who celebrates your success may later resent your progress. If your happiness is tied to those shifting voices, your spirit will never truly rest. Freedom is not found in convincing everyone to understand you. Freedom is found in accepting that not everyone will. There is an incredible peace that comes from realizing you do not have to explain every choice, defend every dream, or justify every step you take. Your purpose is not to collect approval, but to live honestly. Every person carries a unique path, shaped by experiences, struggles, and hopes that no one else can fully comprehend. Expecting universal acceptance is expecting the impossible. Instead of chasing agreement, choose authenticity. Instead of seeking permission, choose courage. Living this way requires strength because the world often rewards conformity. It encourages people to follow familiar paths, repeat accepted ideas, and avoid standing apart. Yet every meaningful transformation begins with someone who refuses to let fear dictate their identity. They understand that discomfort is often the price of growth. They stop asking whether everyone will like them and begin asking whether they are being truthful to themselves. That single shift changes everything. Decisions become clearer. Relationships become healthier. The constant anxiety of pleasing everyone slowly fades, replaced by a quiet confidence that cannot be taken away. When you no longer depend on validation, you begin to recognize your own voice. You make choices because they align with your values rather than with public approval. You celebrate your progress even when no one notices it. You continue your journey even when others doubt your direction. That is the kind of freedom that cannot be purchased, inherited, or granted by another person. It is earned through the daily decision to trust yourself, honor your own worth, and refuse to let the changing opinions of the world become the measure of your life. Solitude has often been misunderstood. Many people hear the word alone and immediately think of emptiness, sadness, or abandonment. They imagine silence as something to fear and distance as something to escape. Yet solitude and loneliness are not the same. Loneliness is the painful feeling of being disconnected from yourself and others, while solitude is the intentional choice to spend time with yourself in peace. One drains your spirit, but the other restores it. The difference lies not in how many people surround you, but in the relationship you have with your own mind and heart. In a world that constantly demands attention, solitude becomes a rare gift. Every day, voices compete for your focus. Social media tells you who you should be. Society tells you what success should look like. Friends, family, and strangers all carry opinions about the way you should live. When these voices become louder than your own, it becomes difficult to recognize what you truly want. Solitude creates the space where those distractions begin to fade. In that quiet place, you are no longer reacting to everyone else's expectations. You begin listening to your own truth, perhaps for the first time in years. Healing rarely happens in crowded places. It happens in moments of reflection when you finally allow yourself to face the emotions you have been avoiding. Many people stay constantly busy because silence forces them to confront old disappointments, fears, and wounds. They fill every moment with conversations, entertainment, and endless activity, hoping to outrun what lives inside them. But pain that is ignored does not disappear. It simply waits. Solitude gives you the courage to sit with those hidden parts of yourself, not to suffer endlessly, but to understand them. The wounds you acknowledge become the wounds you can begin to heal. There is also remarkable strength that grows in solitude. When you become comfortable with your own company, you stop depending on others to fill every emotional gap in your life. Your happiness is no longer controlled by who calls, who stays, or who leaves. You begin to appreciate relationships because they add value to your life, not because they rescue you from yourself. This kind of independence creates healthier connections because love is no longer driven by fear of being alone. Instead, it is guided by mutual respect, honesty, and freedom. Self-discovery is another priceless gift that solitude offers. Away from constant influence, you begin asking deeper questions. What truly brings you joy? What dreams have you ignored to satisfy others? What beliefs belong to you? And which ones have simply been inherited from people around you? These questions cannot be answered in the noise of endless distraction. They require stillness. They require patience. As you spend time alone, you slowly uncover parts of yourself that have been buried beneath years of expectation and comparison. The greatest transformation often begins in quiet moments that no one else witnesses. It is there that confidence is rebuilt. Wisdom takes root, and inner peace begins to replace constant uncertainty. Solitude becomes more than being physically alone. It becomes a sacred space where your identity is no longer shaped by the demands of the outside world, but by the truth that has always existed within you, waiting patiently to be recognized and embraced with unwavering trust. Your worth is not something that has to be earned through perfection, success, popularity, or the approval of others. It exists long before anyone applauds your achievements or recognizes your efforts. Yet many people spend their entire lives believing the opposite. They measure their value by the number of compliments they receive, the size of their accomplishments, the attention they attract, or the expectations they manage to fulfill. When these things increase, they feel important. When they disappear, they begin to question whether they were ever enough. This constant search for proof creates a fragile sense of identity that can be shaken by even the smallest criticism or rejection. The truth is that the world has a habit of attaching value to performance. From an early age, people are often praised when they succeed and overlooked when they struggle. Over time, they begin to believe that love must be earned and respect must be constantly maintained through achievement. They become afraid to fail, because failure feels like a loss of identity rather than a temporary experience. They compare themselves with others, believing someone else's success somehow diminishes their own. This endless comparison steals joy and replaces gratitude with insecurity, leaving people chasing standards that continue to move farther away. Your value, however, does not rise because someone admires you, and it does not fall because someone misunderstands you. A diamond remains precious even when it is buried beneath layers of dirt. Its surroundings do not change its nature. In the same way, your circumstances, your mistakes, or the opinions of others cannot erase the dignity that already belongs to you. There will always be people who fail to recognize your strengths, overlook your kindness, or underestimate your potential. Their inability to see your worth is not evidence that it does not exist. It simply reveals the limits of their perspective. Recognizing your inherent worth changes the way you move through life. You stop begging for acceptance from people who are unwilling to appreciate your presence. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into places that require you to abandon your authenticity. You no longer confuse attention with love or approval with respect. Instead, you begin choosing relationships where you are valued for who you truly are, not for how well you meet someone else's expectations. This shift creates a quiet confidence that cannot be manufactured through praise, because it is rooted in self-awareness rather than public opinion. There will still be difficult days. You will make mistakes, face disappointment, and encounter people who question your choices. But when you understand that your worth is constant, those experiences no longer define you. They become lessons instead of labels. Failure becomes an opportunity to grow rather than a reason to feel ashamed. Criticism becomes something you evaluate with wisdom instead of accepting as truth. You learn that growth does not require self-condemnation. It requires honesty, humility, and the willingness to continue moving forward without doubting your value as a human being. The greatest act of self-respect is refusing to place your identity in the hands of people who cannot determine your significance. When you truly believe that your worth is inherent, you begin to live with greater courage, deeper peace, and stronger conviction. You stop chasing validation because you realize that everything you have been searching for in the voices of others has always existed quietly within you, waiting to be acknowledged, protected, and lived with unwavering confidence every single day. Detaching yourself from the need for validation is not about becoming cold, distant, or indifferent to the people around you. It is about reclaiming your emotional freedom. It is the quiet decision to no longer allow your peace to depend on whether someone praises you, notices you, or agrees with your choices. Many people spend years living as emotional mirrors, reflecting whatever opinions others project onto them. A compliment makes them feel confident, while a criticism makes them question everything. Their emotions rise and fall with every reaction they receive, leaving them exhausted by a cycle they cannot control. Validation can feel comforting because it offers temporary reassurance. When someone admires your work, appreciates your kindness, or celebrates your success, it feels rewarding. There is nothing wrong with enjoying genuine encouragement. The problem begins when that encouragement becomes a necessity instead of a gift. When your confidence depends entirely on external approval, you hand over the control of your emotional well-being to people who are living according to their own moods, preferences, and limitations. You begin making choices based on what will earn applause rather than what aligns with your values. Over time, you lose sight of who you are because you become too focused on becoming who others expect you to be. Emotional independence begins with recognizing that not every opinion deserves a place in your heart. People speak from their own experiences, fears, insecurities, and beliefs. Their judgments often reveal more about their perspective than about your character. If you absorb every criticism without reflection, you will carry burdens that were never yours to bear. Likewise, if you rely on every compliment to feel worthy, you will constantly seek more, because temporary praise can satisfy a deeper need for self-acceptance. Real peace comes from learning to appreciate encouragement without becoming dependent on it. Detachment also teaches you to let go of the impossible task of pleasing everyone. No matter how kind, talented, or generous you are, someone will misunderstand you. Someone will disagree with your choices, question your intentions, or fail to recognize your efforts. Trying to satisfy every expectation is like chasing the horizon. The closer you think you are, the farther it moves away. The more energy you spend trying to control how others perceive you, the less energy you have to become the person you were created to be. As you release the need for constant validation, something remarkable begins to happen. Your decisions become guided by principle instead of popularity. You stop abandoning your dreams because someone doubted them. You stop apologizing for setting healthy boundaries. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. Instead of asking whether everyone approves of your path, you begin asking whether your choices reflect your deepest values and highest character. That simple change transforms the way you experience life. Inner peace is not the result of everyone agreeing with you. It is the result of no longer needing them to. Emotional independence allows you to remain steady during praise and resilient during criticism. You become less reactive, more thoughtful, and more secure because your identity is no longer built upon changing opinions. The world may continue to offer approval one day and rejection the next, but neither has the power to define your spirit when your confidence is rooted in self-respect, quiet conviction, and the unshakable understanding that your peace belongs to you alone. The most important relationship you will ever build is the one you have with yourself. Every relationship in your life, whether with family, friends, colleagues, or strangers, is influenced by the way you see yourself. If you constantly doubt your own worth, you will search for other people to convince you that you matter. If you struggle to respect yourself, you may tolerate disrespect from others because it feels familiar. But when you cultivate a healthy relationship with yourself, everything begins to change. You no longer depend on others to complete you because you have learned to stand firmly within your own identity. Many people dedicate years to understanding everyone else while neglecting the person they spend every moment with. They learn the preferences of others, remember their expectations, and adjust their behavior to keep relationships intact. Yet they rarely pause to ask themselves what they truly need, what brings them peace, or what kind of life reflects their deepest values. In the pursuit of acceptance, they slowly become strangers to themselves. They recognize every voice except their own. This disconnection creates an emptiness that no amount of external affection can permanently fill. Building a relationship with yourself begins with honesty. It requires the courage to look inward without pretending to be perfect or condemning yourself for your imperfections. It means acknowledging your strengths without arrogance and accepting your weaknesses without shame. Growth is impossible without self-awareness, and self-awareness is impossible without truth. When you stop hiding from yourself, you create the opportunity to become someone stronger, wiser, and more authentic. Instead of chasing an impossible image of perfection, you begin embracing the lifelong process of becoming. Self-respect grows from the choices you make every day. It is reflected in the boundaries you set, the promises you keep to yourself, and the standards you refuse to compromise. Every time you honor your values instead of giving in to pressure, you strengthen your confidence. Every time you choose peace over unnecessary conflict, discipline over temporary comfort, or integrity over popularity, you remind yourself that your character matters more than public approval. These small decisions may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time they shape the foundation of your identity. A healthy relationship with yourself also means extending compassion inward. Many people speak to themselves with a harshness they would never use towards someone they love. They magnify every mistake, criticize every flaw, and believe they must earn the right to be patient with themselves. Yet lasting confidence is not built through constant self-condemnation. It is built through accountability balanced with grace. You can acknowledge your mistakes without believing they define you. You can strive for improvement without convincing yourself that you are never enough. When you truly value your own company, solitude no longer feels like emptiness. It becomes a place where your mind can rest, your heart can heal, and your spirit can grow. You stop fearing moments alone because you realize they are opportunities to reconnect with the person you are becoming. You no longer seek relationships out of desperation, but out of genuine appreciation. You choose people who complement your life rather than complete it, because you have already discovered that wholeness begins within. As this relationship deepens, you become less vulnerable to the opinions, expectations, and judgments of others. You trust your own decisions with greater confidence, protect your peace with greater wisdom, and move through life with quiet assurance. The love, respect, and acceptance you once searched for in the outside world become qualities you willingly offer yourself, creating a foundation of inner strength that remains steady regardless of who enters or leaves your life.